Good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock on Monday, the 13th of October, 2025. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Charles Malet, and I'm joined in the studio today by Ben Rubin. Welcome to the programme, Ben.
Thank you, Charles.
Good. And on the live link from Somerset, we have Sandi Adams. Now, today we'll be taking a closer look at the attack on home education, perhaps I should say the continued attack via the Schools and Wellbeing Bill. We'll take a look at a report on what's come out of last week's Apolitical Day, as well as some further scrutiny into the relationship between the Community Security Trust and the police. We'll also be examining Michael Bloomberg and the Behavioural Insights team's meddling in local government, as well as the incessant promotion of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in schools. But we will start with the story of the hour, which is the situation in Gaza. And of course, it was not even a fortnight ago that the Red Cross announced that it was withdrawing personnel from Gaza City due to what they described as the intensification of military operations. They wrote that in Gaza City today, civilians are being killed, forcibly displaced, and made to endure dire conditions. Their statement went on to say that a cessation of hostilities is imperative and urgent, and under international humanitarian law, civilians must be protected whether they stay or leave Gaza City. Israel, as the occupying power, has an obligation to ensure their basic needs are met. Now, this is the same Red Cross, of course, this morning, which was charged with running the process of handing over hostages, Israeli hostages, back to Israel, a process which is reported as now being complete. And indeed, Donald Trump either is or has been addressing the Israeli parliament rather remarkably. And of course, I have to skimp somewhat on the details because it has literally just happened. But he received a standing ovation for telling the Knesset that his daughter had converted to Judaism. So the mood was a strange one. And I think to illustrate this extraordinary gulf between the way in which it's being discussed and the reality of life on the ground for the people in Gaza, we'll listen to what Donald Trump had to say before he flew to Israel yesterday.
This is a very special event. They had 500,000 people yesterday and today in Israel, and also the Muslim and Arab countries are all cheering. Everybody's cheering at one time. That's never happened before. Usually if you have one cheering, the other isn't. The other is the opposite. This is the first time everybody is amazed and they're thrilled, and it's an honor to be involved, and we're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before. So I'll see you on the plane, and we're going to have a good time. Okay?
There we are, Trump the saviour. He's nailed it again. And he seems to be absorbed only in his perception of the effect that he has had on a situation. And he did actually say that we're going to have a good time. But back to the events of this morning, the Red Cross states on Twitter that we hope this marks the beginning of a sustained commitment to the recovery and long-term stability, starting with the immediate and unimpeded delivery of essential aid into Gaza and the release of all the remaining hostages. Now, the handover, of course, marks the start of a swarm of international activity as the gravy train pulls out of the station. The Prime Minister's office has put out a statement at the so-called Peace Summit in Egypt, saying, among other things, the Prime Minister pledges UK leadership in Gaza's reconstruction at historic Egyptian Peace Summit. And they go on to say the Prime Minister will attend the signing ceremony of the Gaza Peace Plan, marking a historic milestone for the region after 2 years of conflict and suffering. Of course, we'll come back to that particular point. They go on to say he's expected to commit the UK government to playing a leading role to accelerate Gaza's reconstruction, working with international partners. Now we're getting slightly closer to the mark, and a £20 million humanitarian aid package will deliver essential water, sanitation and hygiene services to tens of thousands of civilians across Gaza. One might consider that after 2 years of sitting on their hands, implicitly and at times explicitly supporting a genocide, the British administration declares that it's not going to miss out on the lucrative opportunities presented by this next phase of the operation, described very euphemistically as reconstruction. The document goes on to say that the 20 million support forms part of the UK's broader £116 million aid commitment to the Palestinian people this year, including 74 million already allocated for life-saving assistance, and so forth. Now, for context, and of course I'm not intending to make a direct comparison at all, but the United Kingdom has committed more than £5 billion to Ukraine in what's described as non-lethal aid, dishing out the opportunities for investing in this process. Will start this afternoon. And we'll just finish with one of the closing remarks in that statement, which, of course, is the aim of how best to mobilise private sector resources to address the scale of reconstruction required after more than 2 years of conflict have damaged or destroyed 92% of homes. And it is to Wilton Park that we go. The Wilton Park Summit, due to start this afternoon. Now, it describes itself as an executive agency of the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, and they say that the UK Wilton Park Summit will bring together a coalition of representatives from businesses, civil society, and governments to convene crucial planning and coordination efforts for post-war Gaza. Now, if you've been following the sort of train of sentiment so far, you'll consider that it seems very much like an afterthought. There's then finally a reference to the involvement of the Palestinian people, who've not yet been considered in any of this. But the statement does say discussions will also cover efforts to support the Palestinian Authority's own transformation and reform programme to ensure it can support Gaza's recovery. And then bearing in mind the title of the statement in the first place, with Starmer apparently playing a leading role, it goes on to say that reconstruction will be Palestinian-led with absolutely no role for Hamas in its future governance. So it seems that little doubt can remain about who the real winners will turn out to be. And I quote, "The conference will be attended by a range of international partners, including Germany, Italy, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the Palestinian Authority, as well as private sector and international development finance and financiers, including the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the World Bank." Now, Starmer is, as I say, has quoted that figure of saying that 92% of homes have been either damaged or destroyed during this period. And the only response from the United Kingdom really seems to be to push bankers to the fore. Yvette Cooper also weighing in, saying that the UK is to play a crucial part and that they are, again, bringing in investment from the City of London to support reconstruction. So it seems that with pounds and dollars at the forefront of the minds of all the self-declared peacemakers, it's hard to consider that this latest development is anything but something that should be regarded with a huge degree of suspicion and scepticism. And just to close out, even Chatham House in this article, "Can the Trump peace plan for Gaza succeed?" is forced to conclude with the, some might say, blindingly obvious statement, which is that, however, even highly focused and successful delivery of the mission's aims will not disguise the fact that it does not really address the Palestinian right to self-determination. Now, there's going to be obviously a lot more to come out on this, certainly even as today progresses, but one might consider that things do not bode well, despite all the glad-handing that's going on within and without the Trump entourage. Now, Sandi, we are going to look now to you to get the latest on the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill and exactly what it's going to set out to change, particularly for the home educators.
Thank you, Charles. Yes. Well, the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, it hasn't been passed yet because it's between the committee and the report stage in the Lords as of last week on the 9th of October. It still contains serious concerns about parental rights and children's rights, actually, state data sharing and educational freedom. And now is the key moment, really, for parents to act, to write, speak, and make their voices heard before this becomes law. It'll ping pong around, between the Commons and the Lords until it gets royal assent, and it's only got like 3 stages now before it gets to royal assent. So we do need to act fast if we're going to do something about this. In short, the bill is live but not finished. It's paused between stages, and it's a great time to become aware of what's going on. Now, this there's this editorial called the Home Ed Daily, and they are flagging up some real concerns about this. I've put everything in the show notes for you to catch up on this. So So the provisos of this bill, the key provisions of it, it would create a consistent, unique identifier for each child, which is virtually digital ID. It would enable a cross-agency flow of information of welfare, health, and safeguarding issues, strengthen duties to local authorities, health agencies, police, schools, and etc., to share safeguarding data. A compulsory register of children who are not enrolled in schools, and it really is. It's a standardisation of all the curriculums in schools, which is not favouring, the academies, because they've done a lot of work on this, and it's also caps on branded items of school uniform. So, but the main problems are really the. If you want to dig a bit deeper, the bill shifts authority from parents to the state, and beneath the language of safeguarding and well-being, it threatens family autonomy and privacy. There's erosion of parental rights, a threat to educational freedom, data harvesting, which actually in the Lords, in Hansard, only one Lord really mentions this, and we'll get on to him in a minute. A criminalisation of parents and the risks for vulnerable families. So the Lord who did speak up about data surveillance and parental rights on homeschooling was Baron Way of Shoreditch, and he's an interesting chap because he actually was involved with Cameron, with Big Society, with social entrepreneurship and all that sort of thing, which is a bit on the communitarian side for my liking. But on this issue, he really, really stands out. He's a conservative, he's a Christian, and we'll just listen to what he has to say, because he says on the quote here, "My lords, it is with heavy heart that I rise to speak today, heavy because the legislation before us cuts to the very fabric of democratic society." So let's just listen to him in the House of Lords from Hansard. Thank you.
On every state-funded primary school to introduce free breakfast, making them accessible to all children regardless of background. Breakfast clubs have proven benefits. They boost attendance, improve academic attainment, and enhance children's social and emotional well-being. However, access remains fragmented. Despite the good work of the National Schools Breakfast Programme, it reaches only around 2,000 primary schools, covering only a fraction of those in need and funding only 75% of the cost of food and delivery, leaving schools to cover staff wages and other expenses. This bill goes further than simply expanding the existing programme. It makes a fundamental shift in how we support children's education and well-being. From April, 750 schools across all 9 regions, including 45 special schools, have led the way in free daily breakfast clubs, saving parents up to £450 a year. Early adopters will be part of a test and learn phase to strengthen delivery of national rollout. We will learn what works and develop the programme, and this bill will ensure that the opportunities provided.
Sorry, that wasn't Lord Way. I don't know what happened there, but there's a really there's a 2-minute clip of him speaking about this, and that unfortunately isn't it. So never mind, we'll have to catch up on that another time. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. I mean, you're welcome to sort of summarise what it is that he did say, if you'd like to do that now, if you can remember enough of what he said. Or
yes, I'll try and remember what he said. Hang on a sec. Let me just see. Let me just bring this up. Well, really, he went into the fact that it's an erosion of parental rights. The bill treats all parents as potential risks by forcing every home-educated child to be registered with local authorities. Every withdrawal request would be assessed under safeguarding framework, meaning every parent is subjected to a risk assessment. Local authorities could issue school attendance orders. He basically is saying that it would effectively, the state would dictate what counts as acceptable education. Home educators would be required to meet approved standards, making child-led faith-based or creative learning harder to defend. Academics would lose freedom to innovate. Data harvesting, the bill proposes a unique identifier. He does flag that one up for every child, and expanded powers for agencies to share personal data. Such centralised databases risk leaks, wrongful interventions and long-term profiling. It's criminalising parents, and it's got risks for vulnerable families. And he thinks it's a step too far. It undermines responsible parents, criminalises home education, and turns local authorities into enforcers instead of supporters. And I totally agree with him on that score. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andy. And I think, as reported on before, on exactly this issue, but the bill itself, the critical issue is how it's being done. And of course, it's very easy, in a sense, to present the case for there being a problem with children who can't be educated or have their needs met by the formal education system, and therefore they're taken out of it, home educated, and bingo, you've got your problem child, and therefore the reason for having a register in order that the state can intervene and make sure that nothing goes wrong. And it's a most insidious way of doing it, and of course to cast such a wide net over such an enormous number of people who are home educating is utterly immoral, but you can see exactly why it's being done. Sandi, thank you very much indeed for that. Now we're going to go to other things which are not quite perhaps as they seem, but we were talking just before the programme started. What's been going on at Church House then?
Nothing very churchy, right, unfortunately. Yeah. Quite predictable, yes. We're going to look at the ongoing subversion of national governance and its replacement with a new global system that runs on a completely different program, a completely different agenda, and has thus far escaped any kind of serious democratic or even just basic public scrutiny, as far as I can tell. We talked a lot about this organisation, Apolitical, and this will be the focus of this first section. And just to remind our regular viewers and introduce new viewers, this is an organisation that has been set up to build 21st century governments. That's what they do. They work with government departments, foundations, academic institutions, think tanks, NGOs and businesses to bring the latest knowledge and skills to government in order to transform government. It is a key partner of the Cabinet Office. We can see down the left-hand side there, but is operating internationally, very heavily linked into the World Economic Forum. In fact, the Apolitical Global Public Leaders Programme was delivered in partnership with the World Economic Forum of Young Global Leaders. So they are completely hand in glove. They are international. They have global impact in over 170 countries, operating essentially out of London as a hub for this Imperial system that's being established. And I think that's probably a good way to describe it. This is a new empire running on the rails of the old British Empire, which has essentially pushed the nation state down into second position. So this is no longer British or English even. This is global and detached from the national system completely. So actually, whatever we see happening on a daily basis, whether it's Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch or Nigel Farage or Zach Polanski, any of these kind of national political leaders, are effectively redundant as this thing is being rolled out in the background. Right? This is what's been going on for quite some time now, for over a decade actually. And this organisation, if we could just get that back up, it's run by Lisa Witter. You see her in the top right-hand side there. We'll provide links, so there's plenty of videos you can go and see to get some more information about these people. So there's Lisa Witter, and actually if we put her centre frame, we can see her alongside Pooja Warrior Hamilton on the left, Robin Scott on the right-hand side. These three ladies, all young global leaders of the World Economic Forum, running this organisation, operating on a remit to transform global governments everywhere. And who asked them to do that? It was this fella. That's Adam Parr. And last year, at Apolitical Day, which was held in October last year, he regaled us with the story about when Lisa, Robin and I went for a walk in France in 2015. And I asked them to do something pretty much impossible, which is to transform government globally in about a decade, which at the time, I think Brian and I were quite confused about, which is essentially to say, who is this guy? And how does he get to ask that question? And how do they get to accept that invitation and begin that process, right? And we're now in the business end, because 2015, for keen observers will know, that was 10 years ago. He said transform government in a decade. So they're right into the mix here. And last year, you will remember, and again, we'll provide links to this, Catherine Day, who is a senior civil servant. She actually runs foresight at the Cabinet Office, but essentially revealed to us that she has no foresight, and essentially admitted that, and this is a paraphrase, not a direct quote, we have no idea what we're doing. And then Robin Scott on the left there from Apolitical doing her Ice Queen thing that she does, basically saying, I'm going to take you for everything that you have. And that's what's been going on in the background for over a year now. And they have reconvened last week at Church House, as Charles pointed out, for Apolitical Day 2025, and a big announcement came out of this. But let's just first of all quickly look at some of the people in the room who are leading this conversation from this year's event, right? So they're there to talk about the future of government. That's what they're doing. This is the brief that they've set themselves. Interestingly, by the way, there was no live stream this year. I like to think that I had something to do with that, because we gave them a bit of a hard time last year. Maybe it'll pop up in the next few days. I don't know, but it certainly didn't go out live. But we do know who was there. So General Sir Nick Carter, former head of the UK Armed Forces, guy that ran 77th Brigade during COVID, now works at the Blair Foundation. Also Varelia Ionen, the Deputy Minister of Digital Transformation of Ukraine, who I actually spoke about 2 weeks ago. She's part of this trilateral UK-Estonia-Ukraine partnership to deliver the digital identity scheme. She's absolutely in the mix here. Also some European royalty. His Royal Highness, I think I'm saying that, is it Jem or Jamie? Not sure. Jem de Bourbon de Palm. Wonderful name. Describes himself as climate envoy of the Netherlands, but he's a Dutch prince and actually grandson of the man who set up and chaired the Bilderberg meetings. So top tier connections here. Also, Mark Boris Andrijanic, former Minister of Digital Transformation in Slovenia, also a member of the Global Future Council on GovTech and Digital Public Infrastructure at the World Economic Forum, also a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. Also there, Mariana Mazzucato, who's a professor at UCL. It's a very famous clip of her, a World Economic Forum event, describing how she wants to use water as a means to control humanity. So this is the kind of the tone of what's going on inside these discussions. Also, Siobhan Haviland, CBE, Director General of the British Chambers of Commerce. She actually established Apolitical in the Cabinet Office, took personal responsibility for that. And last year, she was crowing about the Apolitical business model, essentially saying it's fantastic that they've built a monopoly position in government transformation, and kind of presenting that to us as a good thing and a positive thing, when it really isn't. It's good for people who want to monopolise wealth and power, like I'm guessing Siobhan Haviland, and certainly the royal family, who she's very close to. I believe she's very close to Queen Camilla in particular. Also, Lord Case, head of the civil service during COVID. So she'd probably be in front of a war crimes tribunal rather than attending events like this. And then finally, although there were many other speakers, I'll just draw attention to Lord Rees, OBE, the former mayor of Bristol, who apparently, according to someone who was there, delivered the best quote of the day, which is nostalgia for the past feeds off an absence of vision for the future, which I think is probably quite revealing, given that they don't actually have a clear vision for the future of the country. None of them can articulate one, and that is the problem ultimately, and it's why they keep on having these highfalutin events and announcing these big international programs. And this year was no different. Catherine Day took to LinkedIn to talk about the joy that she had on the day. If you're watching back, you can pause this, you can read the whole thing yourself. But to get to the fact, to the point, essentially they're building an institute for the nation, a new, independent, apolitical and lasting way for the UK to plan and act together for the long term, across sectors, generations and divides, in our shared interests, for our common good. And the prize is huge, a country that can think long-term and act together, a society with a future we can all believe in, and an example that the world can follow, showing that the UK is actually a test case for global governance. If they can do it here, they're then going to export that everywhere else. Importantly, we can respond to this, and there is an appeal for help to build the institute, and we'll provide a link to this. And essentially they're saying the first major initiative will be a national dialogue launching in spring 2026. This is a UK-wide deliberation, so this will be a controlled, deliberative process using Delphi technique that we speak about a lot on the column. They're going to engage millions of people, apparently, and then turn that into a plan for lasting action. And we need your help to make that happen, whatever your background, business, academia, civil society, technology, etc., etc. Every offer of time, funding, skills, connections, or support brings us closer to launching the national dialogue and building a stronger future together. So apparently they want people to chip in money for this. All seems very odd, but you can go and tell them what you think. So be polite, but be clear about the fact that this is extraordinarily inappropriate, and probably that they shouldn't be doing it. I think that would be my take on it anyway.
I don't think you'd find much disagreement in the people that have just listened to that. The question that pops out is, who do they think they are?
Well, yes.
It's one of the questions, I guess. Ben, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, I think that segment articulates perfectly the resource that UK Column is to not just the UK Column audience in a regular sense, but also those that are looking to research things elsewhere. So can I encourage you, when you are trying to work out why something is happening and indeed where it's come from, to go straight to the UK Column website, where you can use the search function. I've shown the response to a search for the word biometric, and there's absolute host of material to go through. So it is a very, very important resource for people who are or are not yet familiar with the column. Now, of course, we cannot do what we do without your financial support. So if you are considering becoming a member and keeping us afloat, then that would be terrific. There is a very easy way to do that by going to the front page of the website. And also don't forget that you can support us via means of buying any of these wonderful items from our shop. So please do also have a look there. Now, going out on the Germ Warfare platform tonight, 7:00, Pepe Escobar speaking to Germ on the importance of bricks, and not the sort that you might be building with. But that should be an excellent one. And also, I now go on with a slight apology. I'm afraid Patrick Henningson's talk from the Hope event back in August was meant to go out on Thursday, just gone. I'm afraid it didn't, for reasons that I won't necessarily go into because I think I'm qualified to. But it will go out tomorrow at 1:00. And apologies for anybody who was waiting for it to go out on Thursday last week. Now, Sandi, tell us, back to earth. You're going to be going up to the north of England next month.
Yes, I am. Because the North, they're quite unrepresented, really. Not unrepresented, but they don't get as much of our sort of input as the South. So this one's called Back to Earth. It's in Beedale, at the Watermill in Beedale, on Saturday the 15th of November. And it's rediscovering balance through soil, soul and schooling. But we're also looking at, the world's regenerative agriculture, animal and human integrative medicine, and classroom-free education. So it's about the stuff that I've been speaking about today. But a lot of the farmers, I was asked to go up there because a lot of the farmers still aren't getting what Agenda 2030 really will mean to their livelihoods. So that's why I'm going up there.
Fantastic. Sandi, thank you very much. And obviously, if anyone can get up there, please do, because it will be, I'm sure, a very positive day with lots of productive outcome. Now, the moment is very nearly upon us. I can hardly believe it. But our live event in York is getting underway this Saturday, the 18th of October. Again, as you will know, all tickets are sold out for the in-person event, but that does not stop you from signing up to the live stream. And again, to remind you that if you buy a ticket to the live stream, you don't have to watch it at exactly that moment. It will be available afterwards. It will also be available to people who've bought in-person tickets as well. And it includes access to Andy Wakefield's incredible film, Protocol 7. And just quickly to run through the speakers we've got Andrew Wakefield coming. He will be talking about the making of Protocol 7, as well as how his career was derailed after he questioned the process by which vaccines are made. Tess Laurie, who has set up the World Council for Health and the background to that. Liz Evans on the very murky world of medical ethics. And we've got Sir Julian Rose on the critical relationship between human health and the soil. But also speaking this Saturday is Ben Rubin. Ben, what are you going to be talking about?
Did you just say medical ethics?
I said medical ethics.
That's an oxymoron.
Yes. It is.
I'm going to talk about the NHS, what we thought it was, what it actually is, how that happened and what to do about it.
Perfect. So please do go to the UK Column website and to the shop where you'll find a ticket for the live stream. Also, if you do have an in-person ticket, may I remind you that registration will be open on the Friday in the event space that will be holding the day. So it'll start at 6 o'clock on Friday evening and run till 8:30 on Friday. So it would make things a lot easier on the Saturday morning. So if you are able to do that, please do. You will also get an email about it with all the necessary details. Now, that takes us back to Sandi, and you're going to tell us about the way in which the United Nations are continuing to muscle their way into children's classrooms.
Yes, I mean, this is called the largest lesson in the world's largest lesson, and it's a way of this was launched over 10 years ago, but it's ongoing, and it's an instrument that they use in primary schools for teachers as well as children to really indoctrinate them into climate change and the 17 goals. So let's listen to the promotional video that they teach to children. Thank you.
Global Goals for Sustainable Development. These are 17 goals to protect the planet against climate change and make the world safer, fairer, and more just for everyone. We have to achieve these goals by 2030. The great thing about having a plan is that we can check how we're doing along the way, give ourselves a pat on the back if we do well, and try harder if not. 2030 isn't so long away, so we'll need to encourage each other with lots of ideas. We can start by making these goals famous.
So that's it. It's really, telling the children that the 17 goals are really good, wonderful thing that will actually improve inequality. Now, we've had 10 years of 17 goals and they've done the exact opposite. So I just want to flag up, they've now got the 2025 global goals toolkit actually they've launched. Now, somebody got in touch with me because their child is being given all this stuff at school through the teachers. The teachers are going along with it. Now, what I noticed that the whole thing is produced by Project Everyone, and if you look at Project Everyone, you'll realise that actually it's got some very interesting partners and. Here we go. The lead partners are Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Open Society Foundation, which is George Soros's Open Society. And then they've got some partners, which are PricewaterhouseCoopers, the Rockefeller Foundation, TikTok, UNICEF, as well as they've got some supporters. The supporters are, can we see the supporters? Yeah, they think they've gone as well. Sorry. We've got obviously C40 cities, the all of these different supporters who are all part of the global agenda. The next one is I just wanted to flag up that obviously this is all about quality education, which is goal 4, which they say is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. But actually, in reality, I've got a slide from my website, which is education will be remote, online lifelong training in STEM, that's science, technology, engineering and mathematics, accredited with blockchain micro badges, non-fungible tokens and credentials on the blockchain, social reputation and score, so it's almost like a social credit system, children's outcomes determined from birth and AI-guided biometrically, social and emotional learning, profiling, creating the perfect global citizen. That's what it's all about. And that's what I notice in this new bill that they're bringing in. And STEM education, as I mentioned before, science, technology, in engineering and mathematics. So what is presented as something really wonderful has actually got a different meaning. Creating perfect, compliant global citizens. That's what it's about.
Absolutely right, Sandy. You're very much on the mark there. And I think the way in which the sort of proof can be found in the eating is that if you do have the opportunity to speak to somebody, a child who's in the school system, it will absolutely be quite clear how these influences are affecting themselves. And of course, if you don't know children necessarily of that age, then speaking to the parents is just as illustrative, because of course this stuff does flow uphill as well. I mean, it's quite remarkable the way in which it pervaded the minds. Now, with regard to meddling where we shouldn't really be having meddling, we're going to talk about, well, Michael Bloomberg among others, I think, aren't we?
Yes, well, it's just amazing how all these things link together, right? So that was really fascinating, Sandy. Thanks for that. And you highlighted a couple of organisations at the end there. Project Everyone, by the way, that's run by Kate Garvey, who was Blair's former diary secretary in Number 10, and is very closely linked into Freud Communication, who were on the partner list, and Gold's House, and all these other things that we speak about on a regular basis. And you also mentioned C40 Cities. C40 Cities, the global network of metro mayors, which is overseen by, as president, Michael Bloomberg. And we're going to hear a little bit now about his innovation teams that he funds in mayors' offices around the world.
Cities are growing. Half the people in the world live in cities. Pretty soon, 2/3 will live in the cities. Cities are incapable of taking care of that growth unless they change and do new things. What we're trying to do is to help governments all over the world to try something that's new outside the box.
The Innovation Teams program is one of the first things that we started here at Bloomberg Philanthropies. We fund staff to work for a mayor to really serve as an in-house consultancy within city government. They are focused on experimentation, R&D, using design to expand the way that we're thinking about what's possible. I-Teams inject those new ways of thinking into city halls to help them dream bigger and create better solutions.
I-Teams. Sounds great, doesn't it? So there we have Michael Bloomberg saying cities are inevitable, essentially, but they're also incapable of dealing with their own inevitability. The fact that we're going to have 2/3 of the world's population in cities, apparently. So he's funding these innovation teams to work as in-house consultancies to inject new ways of thinking into city halls. Initially in the US, so they started in 2012 in Memphis. It's now a global program. And last week, Mr. Bloomberg touched down at the Serpentine Gallery in Hyde Park in central London. And the great and the good, or maybe they're not quite so good, not sure, were there to listen to him speaking. We had Lord Vasey, who helped establish Ofcom, Tracy Brabin, the Mayor of West Yorkshire, who's absolutely in this Metro Mayor scheme. Also Brent Hoberman, the Chief Executive of Founders Fund, who's also a World Economic Forum Young Global Leader. Baroness Rebuck, who's the Chief Executive of Penguin Random House, one of the biggest publishing companies on earth, and also the mother of Georgia Gould, former Mayor of Camden, now runs the Cabinet Office. They were all there, amongst others, to hear Mike Bloomberg speaking about a $50 million investment that he's putting into Europe to support 30 European mayors and 60 city leaders in this development process, in this innovation process, the transformation into a new digitally connected global system of governance, controlled in large part by supposedly philanthropic wealth, handed down or injected down into the system by people like Michael Bloomberg and into institutions, importantly, like the London School of Economics. So this is a key partner for the programme. You can see here it's talking about the European City Leadership Initiative. Yeah, and this is Bloomberg LSE. They've got a joint logo at the top there, strategic partnership. Obviously, LSE founded by the Fabian Society. They put in a bunch of money in order to fund propaganda. That's what the LSE was set up to do, to deliver propaganda for Fabian aims. And who better to come and speak at this first event than Sadiq Khan, who is the co-chair of C40 Cities, working under Michael Bloomberg, and also on the executive committee of the Fabian Society. And sometimes he has time to be Mayor of London as well. Whether he's doing a good job of that or not, I wouldn't care to comment right now. And these picks came from Claudia Chalice, who was also there. There she is on the right-hand side, who is the founder of Democracy Next. And she was there to answer the question, how do we strengthen citizens' trust in government, government's trust in citizens, and citizens' trust between one another? And they say this quite a lot, and it always does make me wonder why on earth we should be concerned about whether governments trust their citizens. It's got nothing to do with them. It's about we have to trust them, but it doesn't go back the other way. That's not the way that the relationship works. But unfortunately, that's what's kind of imbued this whole discussion. If we just drop that back on screen quickly, we can see she was talking about this permanent citizens' assembly in Paris, which they've established, where they are already using assemblies in order to define and implement legislation. Yeah, so this is something that is happening. They've done it in Paris. They've done it in Ireland. They're even doing it at a global level around COP and around the UN, right? So these deliberative processes, which are very tightly controlled and stage-managed, pseudo-democratic decision-making processes that she's been pioneering, are absolutely at the centre of how these systems are working, are going to work in the future, unless we do something about it. And I was rather tickled recently to hear her talking on another interview about what her actual thoughts are on democracy. And we've got a little clip here, which we can listen to now.
There's been a notion that legitimacy has been equated to how many numbers and how many people are participating based on the lens through which we tend to view it through our existing electoral and representative institutions of what we think about as democracy today. But there's no reason to think that the only thing from which legitimacy stems from is numbers. So,
do you hear that? There's no reason to think that legitimacy comes from numbers in democratic processes. Right? She's running this whole program. She's been invited to talk at the LSE alongside Sadiq Khan, funded by Michael Bloomberg. And this is essentially what we're looking at here. They talk a great game about democracy, but actually this is technocracy, tyranny, ultimately, with a very thin veneer of democratic process layered over the top, right? This is completely unsurprising because, as we've mentioned, this thing is being completely embedded into the Metro Mayor scheme. And when we were asked to vote on the Metro Mayor scheme, the devolution in England, it was soundly rejected. So if we go back to 2004, we can see here's a clip from some of the reporting as the results came in from the referendum for devolution in the northeast, and it was rejected. 78% said no to 22% saying yes. And what did the Labour government do? They cancelled all the subsequent referendums. This is a total humiliation for Blair, for Prescott, for this whole agenda. And when it was rejected by the populace, they just said, well, tough, we're going to do it anyway. And that's exactly what's been going on, right? So none of this has ever been voted on. When it was voted on briefly, thickened over 20 years ago now, we said no, but they've proceeded. And this isn't just theoretical, it's actually rolling out because, well, as we've talked about, there are millions of dollars coming into this from international billionaires. And Oliver Coppard, we can see here, who's the mayor of South Yorkshire, who was also at that event at the Serpentine, is advertising roles in his administration overseen by the Behavioural Insights team, right? So the Behavioural Insights team and Nesta are administering this money being put down into the UK mayoral system as part of the Bloomberg Philanthropies I-Team programme, with the aim, ultimately, they say, of what have we got here? Implementing solutions to pressing local challenges, deploying data, collecting insight, collaborating across sectors to develop resident centres interventions that improve people's lives for your own good, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, just keep calling it democracy and it'll be
yes, fine. Exactly.
So it seems. Ben, thank you very much indeed. Now, we're going to move on to a subject that was covered a little bit in the news last week. Of course, the events that took place at the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester have raised the profile of the Community Security Trust. Brian Gerrish was talking about this last Monday, and it brings out a number of concerns, not least with regard to the relationship between the police and the Home Office, or at least the relationship between the CST, the police, and the Home Office. Now, on their pinned post on X, which is what Twitter was, it makes specific regard to security notice for the UK Jewish community. And I'll just pull out the highlighted text or the underlined text there saying a security notice for the UK Jewish community, and talking about everybody having a part to play, looking out for suspicious activity and reporting it immediately to security personnel, police and CST, as though in some ways they are to be regarded as equivalent organisations. Now, of course, in that the CST has what it describes as being a responsibility for the physical security of Jewish people, fair enough to an extent, although there's very strong inference that police are there to deal with an incident because the people are Jewish rather than in spite of being Jewish. Now, there's also the suggestion that they're on an equal footing, which of course is not the case, although problematic in that police do have certain powers, whereas those working for the Community Security Trust do not. The relationship between the two is certainly unique. The CST, you may not be aware, but they are the only organisation in the country which conduct joint patrols with police. And of course, as I say, if they're not holding any powers, it's hard to see how the operational independence of police isn't challenged by this, since police would have to act on behalf of the CST, which has the specific task, as I say, of providing physical security, but only for the Jewish community. So there are a number of areas in which that there are problems with the way in which not just the relationship is set up in the first place, but the way that it actually gets conducted, in effect, on the ground. Now, it goes back to 2015, and I've got the statement from the National Police Chiefs Council from the 25th of March of that year, which concerns data sharing between police, the CST, and an organisation called Tel Mama, which I'll come on to talk about. John Mann, MP, who was then chair of the all-party parliamentary group to combat anti-Semitism, said at the time, data sharing between the police and the CST allows the UK to boast one of, if not the best data set on anti-Semitism in the world. Now, I'll come back to why exactly that's significant. The CST website on the police partnership slide, which we just looked at a moment ago, it says that the CST works closely with police at regional, local and national levels to help protect Jewish communities. This includes joint patrols, as I say, training classes, exercises, exchange of anti-Semitic incident data and numerous advisory roles. We're also proud to assist in the work of the police in tackling hate crime and preventing terrorism. Now, specifically on what they describe as involvement with Parliament, they say they work with members of Parliament from all the main political parties and regularly meet government ministers and opposition spokespeople to discuss anti-Semitism, racism, extremism and terrorism. Now, with this in mind, it can't really be regarded as coincidence that in 2015, David Cameron's speech to the CST came only a few days before the announcement about the sharing of data. And we'll just look at a couple of things that he said during that speech. First of all, I want the CST to have a state-of-the-art mission control centre with closed-circuit television command and control and the ability to respond rapidly to those who need their help right across our Jewish communities. Now, I make the point again that they do not have any powers over and above those of an ordinary citizen. He went on to say, I will always stand up for the right of Israel to defend its citizens, a right enshrined in international law, in natural justice and fundamental morality. And interesting, of course, considering what's happened in the intervening 10 years. Now, the next point to make is that prior to this, the Community Security Trust had published what they called a guide to fighting hate crime for the Home Office, and in doing so, effectively took ownership of the very notion of a hate crime. And I'll just remind you what the definition is and how entirely exposed it is to subjective interpretation. Any criminal offence which is perceived by the victim or any other person to be motivated by hostility or prejudice based on a person's religion or perceived religion. Now, they've completely stripped away the element of intent. And since 2023, most notably, there's been a very well orchestrated push to conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. And it's this video on the CST website, which I would say does exactly that. So we'll just have a listen to this.
So when people talk about the Zionists without qualifying what they mean, they're generalizing about most Jews, and it's dangerous because generalizing about the vast majority of any minority group will lead to racism. But that doesn't mean that criticizing Zionism is racist. If you said to me, listen, I think that the Zionist movement had terrible consequences for the Palestinian people, I might say, well, so do I. Another Jewish person might feel totally different. In short, you can assume as much about someone who says they're a Zionist as you can by their favourite TV show. Love Island? You're a genocidal monster. But what's this all got to do with learning how to be an anti-Semite? Well, you can very quickly expand the type and variety of the terms you use for Jew. You can start with plain old Zionist, but why not give Zio a go? Or if you really want to piss them off, try Zio-Nazi to be really offensive. Something else you can do is use Zionism to accuse a British Jew of not being truly British because they support the existence of a Jewish state. It's dead racist. And instead of saying that Jews are running the world, you could say that Zionism is a secret global power structure that conspires to manipulate governments, cause wars, destabilize countries, and incites hatred between communities. Now, don't let me tell you how to be an anti-Semite. You should feel free to experiment. If you're wondering whether something is legitimate criticism of Israel or whether it slips into anti-Semitism, just take an anti-Semitic statement, swap the word Jew for Zionist, and see how it sounds. For example, if this sentence is anti-Semitic, Jews run the banks and control the global financial markets, then so is this. Zionists run the bank and control the global financial markets. Jews control the media. Zionists control the media. Jews created ISIS and are behind global terrorism. Zionists created ISIS and are behind global terrorism. We're very busy.
A remarkable reframing exercise there under a very thin veil of humour, but that is indeed on the Community Security Trust website. Now, the other thing to point out is that they fund and assume some control over the organisation which records Islamophobia, incidents of Islamophobia, Tell Mama. And this was in the data sharing agreement, which I showed earlier. This comes under their heading of helping other communities, and indeed they say that the the initiative is to measure and combat anti-Muslim hate crimes, and referring to the hate crime booklet that I've just referenced. Tell Mama themselves, of course, talk about having people who are non-Muslim as their patrons and various advisory board members. So, in effect, the Community Security Trust taking ownership of almost all incidents of what it's describing as hate crime, which of course is very significant. Now, it's more data for them, although they're not necessarily so keen themselves on sharing information. The Charity Commission website shows that there is no trustee information available for this particular charity. I should also point out the government funding for the CST went up dramatically last year in response to what was reported as a dramatic increase in hate crime. These hate crimes, of course, are recorded and curated by the CST itself. So there are a number of serious issues here, I think not least concerning the operational independence of police. And I would just leave you with the suggestion that you might like to read an article I wrote nearly 2 years ago about the way in which police were being manipulated to achieve exactly these sorts of outcomes. Now, Sandi, my apologies, I've overrun slightly, but we're now going to go to, in a way, what might be regarded as a slightly bizarre relationship between the lions and eyesight tests and biometric data.
Yes, I mean, I was quite amazed at this. A parent flagged this up to me last week, and we've got the International Lions charity, and they're partnering up. They're going into schools and testing children's eyesight as almost like as a mission thing. They're going to help children's eyesight throughout the UK. Can I just flag up the next slide? Yeah, it's a clearer future for every child. So they're testing children's eyesight, basically, which all sounds very worthy and wonderful until you realise that this isn't just a charity initiative in the UK. It's actually a global initiative. And you've got the equivalent is the Lions Kids site in the USA. Now, if you dig a little bit deeper, you realise that this is even bigger because it's got companies. They're partnered up with Johnson & Johnson, with the World Health Organization, many partners worldwide. And you realise that this is actually quite interesting because the person that got in touch with me was worried about biometric data, iris, scans, all that sort of thing, and the children being identified by their iris scans. And I think they've probably got something, behind this, because I looked at their privacy policy, and unfortunately, it does say that that's highlighted there. This will all be in the show notes, but it actually says that they can share this data with third parties, which is really concerning, I think. And I think we really have to follow this up. And schools shouldn't be doing this, just letting charities come in and do it. And they're training people up to do this. So I think we need to really look at it because I think there is a worry there. Thank you.
Absolutely, Sandi, there is. And I think even if they're saying that they have permission or they may share it, is in a way beside the point, because, of course, even if they don't and they're a third party, there's no way they can guarantee the security of that data in the first place, as exemplified by so many cyber disasters in recent times. Now, we're just going to finish off with a very brief look at the latest news on pseudo-scientific propaganda, which is dressed up as health advice, thinly veiling the aim of continuing to destroy landscapes, rural economies, and common sense. And I give you the rehash of the planetary health diet of 2019, which had sunk without trace, but it's just bobbed to the surface again thanks to The Lancet. Now, it states that actions on food systems strongly impact the lives and well-being of all and are necessary to progress towards goals highlighted in the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So no surprises there in a sense. But what's changed now is they're saying, or at least not necessarily changed, but what they're stating is that more than half the world's population struggles to access healthy diets, leading to devastating consequences for public health, social equity, and the environment. And this latest paper is saying that it's expanding its scope and strengthening its evidence base, which is why it's come out again. And I would suggest that it bodes ill by stating exactly what it does there. Now, on the changes to be made to the diet of people who are currently alive in the world, they say that some sectors would need to contract, and they're putting out a figure of 33% reduction in ruminant meat production. They say that others would need to expand, and they're calling for a 63% increase in fruit, vegetable, and nut production. But this is only in comparison with the 2020 production levels. So it's very drastic changes that they're putting out, and one might consider that this is modelling at its very worst, or it's extreme, absolute cherry picking and willful avoidance of the many variables that are concerned with all of this. But it's exactly the sort of paper which provides impetus for organisations like the Office for Health Economics, which suggested just last year an entirely plant-based diet for the whole of England in its 2024 report. And of course, they, with the use of modelling and pure speculation, they were suggesting that not only would this vastly reduce disease of all forms, but it would also reduce food production costs as well. Now, there's not really sufficient time to go into more of this in this brief report, but what I would like to do is to point you towards John Fleetwood's analysis of this on Substack, and it'll be something that we come back to in the future. There'll be a link to it in the show notes, and of course also to consider all matters food and farming by going to the farming section on the UK Column website. Now, that does bring us to the end of the programme. So just a reminder that we've got Germ speaking to Pepe Escobar at 7 o'clock tonight. Don't miss that. And indeed, Patrick Henningsen will go out at 1 o'clock tomorrow, Thursday, speaking from the Hope event in Sussex over the bank holiday weekend. If you are a UK Column member, please stick around and join us for Extra in a few minutes. If you're not, please consider joining, and don't forget about tickets for the York event this weekend. Ben, thank you very much indeed for joining me in the studio.
Thank you.
Sandy, thanks for being on the live link, and we'll see you again in a minute for Extra. If you're not able to join, we'll look forward to seeing you again at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. Bye-bye.